Electricity sales already exceed 60%.
United States imposes tariffs on Asian batteries.
China leads global production with record
Le
figures.
lithium atteint des sommets historiques après les restrictions
Fabricantes
commerciales.
tradicionales anuncian cierres y nuevas
Эксперты
alianzas.
предупреждают о растущих рисках в сфере кибербезопасности транспортных средств.
Experts warn of growing risks in vehicle cybersecurity.
In 2026, more than 1.45 billion vehicles are circulating on the planet, including passenger cars, trucks, and buses. Each year, between 90 and 95 million new units are produced. That equals more than 260,000 vehicles per day, nearly 3 per second. Since the late 19th century, more than 2.6 billion vehicles have been manufactured in total. Over 55% of all historical production has taken place after the year 2000, reflecting industrial acceleration and the growth of emerging economies. Road transport consumes approximately 45% of the world's oil. Passenger cars generate more than 3 billion tons of CO2 annually, about 10% of global energy-related emissions. In the United States, there are nearly 0.8 vehicles per capita. In Western Europe, the average is around 0.6. In China, it exceeds 0.2 and continues to rise. In India, it does not reach 0.05. The inequality in motorization explains the future growth potential in densely populated regions. If each vehicle occupies an average of 10 square meters when parked, the current fleet would require more than 14,500 square kilometers of surface area. In cities such as Los Angeles, Mexico City, or Shanghai, traffic congestion represents economic losses equivalent to 1% of annual urban GDP. The automotive market generates more than $2.8 trillion in direct revenue and supports more than 50 million direct jobs in manufacturing, engineering, and distribution. China produces more than 30 million vehicles per year, more than the United States, Japan, and Germany combined. Toyota and Volkswagen have historically competed for global leadership in cumulative sales. BYD and Tesla dominate electric growth. Hyundai, General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis remain structural pillars. The luxury segment represents less than 2% of total volume, but can exceed operating margins of 25% in brands such as Ferrari or Porsche. In 2026, electric vehicles account for more than 18% of global sales. In China, they exceed 35%. Europe is approaching 25%. The United States stands at around 20%. The energy transition is no longer a future promise. It is an expanding industrial reality. By 2036, electric vehicles represent between 55% and 65% of global sales. In China, they surpass 80%. Western Europe reaches 75%. The United States stands at around 60%. Latin America reaches 40%. Africa remains close to 30%, concentrated in major capitals. BYD consolidates its position as the world's largest manufacturer by total volume, surpassing 40 million annual units combined between fully electric and plug-in hybrid vehicles. Tesla maintains leadership in software and assisted driving, but its global market share declines from 15% to 10% due to Asian competition. Toyota strengthens its hybrid presence and expands its commitment to hydrogen in heavy transport. The industry's average profitability falls from a historical 7% to around 5% due to intense competition. Chinese manufacturers maintain margins close to 9% thanks to vertical integration in batteries. CATL controls more than 45% of the global battery cell market in 2036. At the product level, the battle is no longer fought only over range or acceleration, but over the entire platform: battery, motor, software, connectivity, and services. Ford and General Motors regain momentum by converting part of their business into subscription models. Advanced assistance, safety packages, performance updates. Volkswagen does the same with its infotainment ecosystem, while Toyota focuses on reliability and lower maintenance costs for emerging markets. Customers no longer compare cars. They compare ecosystems. In 2038, the European Union implements the Automotive Energy Sovereignty Regulation, requiring that at least 50% of the batteries sold within the bloc come from regional production or certified recycling. The United States responds with massive tax credits for domestic manufacturing. China restricts exports of synthetic graphite in 2034 for 6 months, raising global battery prices by 60%. Shares of European manufacturers fall on average 12% in 1 week. In parallel, a social tension emerges. The used car market electrifies more slowly. In 2037, millions of consumers are trapped in an expensive transition. New electric vehicles drop in price, But insurance and repairs continue to cost more due to electronics and batteries. Governments in Europe and Asia create fair replacement funds that subsidize the replacement of old fleets, especially taxis and urban delivery vehicles. It is not just a technological shift. It is public policy applied on wheels. European refineries operate at 65% capacity. Global gasoline demand falls 15% compared to 2026. Oil companies convert stations into fast charging and energy storage centers. However, rural regions in emerging economies remain heavily dependent on diesel. By 2046, more than 75% of global sales are electric or hydrogen-powered in developed economies. In China and Europe, they exceed 85%. Advanced autonomous driving is present in 60% of new vehicles sold in North America and East Asia. Tesla, Waymo, and Chinese manufacturers such as Baidu Auto operate autonomous fleets in more than 70 cities. 65% of urban trips in Shanghai and 55% in New York are made through shared autonomous vehicles. Revenue from software, updates, and services represents up to 20% of the turnover of technology manufacturers. Here a new industrial battle is born: data. Autonomous vehicles generate massive amounts of information about streets, consumption habits, traffic, and energy. Cities and governments demand sovereignty. That data be stored locally and shared with authorities. Companies respond with limited agreements, because that data is gold. By 2046, automotive competition already resembles telecommunications competition. Whoever controls the connectivity standard and the vehicle operating system captures value for decades. In 2044, an incident redefines regulations. A defective update in a European autonomous system causes a multi-vehicle collision in Berlin. Although the number of victims is limited, the political reaction is immediate. The European Union establishes direct corporate criminal liability for algorithmic failures. The United States adopts similar regulatory frameworks in 2045. That same period drives a shift in design. Urban cars become smaller, modular, with interiors that prioritize passive safety and redundant sensors. Luxury companies change their narrative. Ferrari and Porsche sell human experience in the face of an increasingly automated world. Luxury is no longer only speed. It is exclusivity, touch, design, synthetic sound, craftsmanship applied to sustainable materials. The paradox is clear. While the masses move in shared fleets, a minority pays more to drive for pleasure. In 2042, the United States imposes 25% tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, arguing state subsidies. China responds by restricting exports of rare earths essential for electric motors. For 8 months, the price of neodymium rises 40%. Volkswagen and Ford temporarily reduce production at European plants due to shortages of magnetic components. Hydrogen gains ground in heavy transport. Toyota and Hyundai lead fuel cell trucks. Europe invests in green hydrogen logistics corridors. 20% of freight transport in advanced economies uses hydrogen in 2046. By 2056, more than 90% of sales in developed economies are electric. China and Europe exceed 95%. Latin America stands at around 75%. Africa reaches 60% in major urban areas. Global gasoline demand falls 35% compared to 2026. Factories are almost completely automated. Direct employment in assembly decreases by 45%, but jobs in artificial intelligence, robotic maintenance, and recycling grow. More than 55% of the lithium used comes from advanced recovery processes. During this decade, a new corporate architecture consolidates. Mergers and alliances to survive low margins. Traditional manufacturers become integrators, acquiring battery startups, security software companies, and charging network providers. A 2056 car is no longer designed as a closed product. It is designed as an updatable service. The consequence: whoever falls behind in cybersecurity or standards compatibility loses access to entire markets. Regulators require annual vehicle digital security certifications, just as technical inspections are required today. In 2053, an international investigation reveals irregular labor practices in an African mine supplying cobalt to multiple Western manufacturers. Trade sanctions generate cumulative losses exceeding $30 billion in the sector over 1 year. Mandatory digital traceability through blockchain becomes the standard in Europe and North America. China controls nearly 50% of global advanced battery production in 2056. CATL and BYD consolidate their leadership. The United States reduces dependence to 35% through investments exceeding $100 billion in domestic manufacturing. Europe establishes regional consortia to secure strategic supply. Autonomous vehicles represent 75% of new sales in developed cities. Private ownership declines in dense urban centers. Only 45% of urban households own a vehicle. On-demand mobility services account for nearly 50% of urban kilometers traveled. By 2066, more than 97% of new vehicles sold globally are electric or powered by green hydrogen. Road transport emissions are reduced by more than 70% compared to 2026. Oil demand for light mobility falls by nearly half. Private ownership in dense cities drops to 35%. Most people use shared autonomous systems integrated into smart urban networks. Manufacturers generate up to 30% of their revenue through software, data, and energy services. At this stage, the central conflict is no longer electric versus gasoline. It is infrastructure and control. Cities negotiate with manufacturers and fleet operators as if they were public utilities. Per-kilometer fees, access to priority lanes, and circulation limits based on carbon footprint. At the same time, a cultural clash emerges. Populations that see automation as a loss of freedom. In some regions, manual driving becomes a regulated activity, confined to specific zones or special licenses, as is the case today with pilots and aircraft. The luxury market remains solid. Ferrari produces fewer units than in 2026 but maintains margins above 25% thanks to extreme customization and ultralight recyclable materials. Porsche integrates biometric artificial intelligence that dynamically adjusts the driving experience according to the user's physiological parameters. In 2061, a coordinated cyber attack temporarily paralyzes 4 million connected vehicles in North America for 6 hours. No massive collisions are recorded, but the economic impact exceeds $15 billion in logistical disruptions. Cybersecurity comes to represent more than 5% of the operating budget of global manufacturers. Comparing 1920 with 2066 shows the magnitude of change. In 1920, production was mostly mechanical, and Ford's assembly line reduced manufacturing times to less than 2 hours per unit. In 1950, the world produced around 10 million vehicles annually, powered by simple combustion engines. In 2026, production exceeds 90 million with advanced electronic integration. In 2066, factories are interconnected automated nodes that assemble personalized vehicles under optimized energy demand. The present has always been an imperfect projection of the past. In 1920, the automobile symbolized industrialization. In 1950, post-war prosperity. In 2026, energy transition and geopolitical competition. In 2066, it will be mobile digital infrastructure integrated into smart cities. It will not be a utopian or catastrophic scenario. It will be more efficient, more automated, and more dependent on complex technological supply chains. Some historic brands will disappear. Others will transform radically. Mobility will persist because the human need to move does not disappear. The automobile will remain part of the global economic pulse, even though its form, ownership, and energy change profoundly. The transformation will not happen overnight, but cumulatively, decade after decade.